Peter. There we go. All right. Um, so we're going to start our presentation on the importance of narrative. So this is a presentation that I'm doing as part of a series of presentations uh, with my residency with the New Brunswick Disability Art Collective. So I want to mention this residency is funded by artsnb, and I'm super grateful for their support of my residency because if not, my work would not be possible. So we're very grateful. And so I'm just going to take a minute and introduce myself. Um, so my name is Jessica Kenney. I'm a disabled neurodivergent artist, musician, and poet living in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Uh, so I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So what that means is I do more than one medium. So like I play flute, I write free verse poetry, I work with a little bit with textiles, I do digital art, I do watercolor painting and illustration, I do hand-drawn animation. So I have my hands in a lot of different types of art. So I'm pretty diverse and motley in what I'm doing. I also enjoy combining mediums. So a lot of my work is sometimes like a combination of mediums. Like I did a felt board installation. So it was a combination of music and textile and visual art. So it was really interesting because I was taking these stencils of music, like music notes and music elements, cutting them out of felt and using them as like appliques. So like felt pieces that you can stick onto the felt board. So you could compose, like you could take music notes and stick them to the felt board. So my goal with that was to try to make music a little bit more uh, soft to the touch. Ironically, it was made of felt, so it was very soft. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of a way that I like combining mediums. Is I find having that combination can really help get messages out there and get new ideas going on. Um, so also a lot of my work does focus on disability advocacy. So I think this is why I'm super excited to be talking about the importance of narrative, because in advocacy and in art, our story makes such a big difference. Like it's so important to be telling our stories. Last year, I had went to Catapult, ArtsLink Catapult. So it's a 8-week program put on by ArtsLink NB, and it's an art accelerator. So Catapult teaches you business skills, art business skills. And one of my biggest takeaways from Catapult was how important it is for us as artists, and especially artists with disabilities, to share our story. Because so much of what we were doing there was learning how to talk about our art and learning how to talk about like our stories and how they connect to our art. It was a really interesting and really fun experience to have. So art is powerful, and art can change the world. Our stories are a really large part of what makes art so powerful, because we can share our lived experience. We can use our art to basically teach and inspire new ideas. It helps us connect to one another, which is important, and it helps to break down barriers. Uh, the stories that go with our art are just as important as the art itself, because I think that the stories that we have, our lived experience, is part of the creation and is part of something that we put in the art. Um, so think of a time, guys, when something moved you, when something like really touched you, and think about like what was it and how did it make you feel and why was it important? Um, like I know for me, I had a big realization. I was doing a concert band. I was participating in a concert band, and we were learning repertoire. And the music director was saying about one of the pieces that we were doing was about like mountain ranges and rivers, and it was a piece of music, and I thought, well, this is so cool to know like the story behind it. It wasn't just music that we were playing as a group. It was music that we were playing that was telling the story of these beautiful mountains and like flowing rivers just through the notes that we were playing. And as he was like telling us about that, and as we were playing and he was directing us on how we could play that and how we could express our playing, I realized how important that story is and how important expressing things were, because even how we were playing the music is a part of telling the story. So I'm gonna put those questions in the chat if you guys want to answer some of those questions. So think about a time when you've been moved by something. Think about, what was it? How did it make you feel? And why did it matter? Why was it important to you? I'm gonna put that in the chat. Um, but feel free to, if you have thoughts on that, chime in with that. So you can unmute and you can chime in with that.
Okay. So you want to know like a moving story about that?
Yeah, like if there was like just something like a piece of art that you saw in a gallery, a piece of music that you'd heard, or like a
An
theater group
experience?
performance. Yeah, it could be anything, any kind of art that like you were like, it really made an impression on you. It really like touched your soul. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I do have I do have something like that that
yeah,
really inspired me when we were doing craftism at the College of Craft and Design,
yeah,
and we were studying advocacy of artists. And my favorite advocate, his name is Wei Wei, and he's a Chinese descendant artist, but he doesn't live in China. He left China, but he does these incredible installations about things that are happening in the world. And he did one on remember the refugee crisis, and all those refugees were crossing the sea trying to get to the Italian coast.
yeah.
And remember, and some of them wouldn't make it. So he did a fantastic installation, two of them actually. One based on all the people um, like in this boat. It looked like it was ebony. The whole thing was ebony. It's a huge, big structure, and it was to represent the people that were nameless and everything that would be in the boat, and you'd never know who they are.
Wow.
And the other one was when he took all the life jackets um, that represent all the people that didn't make it, fleeing their country, trying to get into Italy and stuff like that. And that really, really made a huge impact on me.
Absolutely.
Check him out, Way. He's just fantastic. But it was profound.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great example of like how narrative in your art and narrative, even your own narrative, is so important to the art that we're creating and to the like artistic activities that we have. Thank you for sharing that. That's fabulous. Carly, do you have do you have an experience you'd like to share?
Well, I know two songs that keep popping in my head,
Yeah.
like the song "Break Down the Walls" by Austin and Ally. And I sort of see like the advocacy can be like that, breaking down some of the barrier walls that have been put up and need to be made more open concept.
Absolutely.
I don't have a specific exact. Am I coming through on your microphone?
That's okay.
You might need to mute yourself for a
Yeah.
moment, Jess. I don't have a specific example, but I read a lot of fiction, and in a lot of my favorite stories, my favorite scenes are when characters are supported by each other through their community, and you can tell when you're reading it that the writer really considers community to be an important part of their world, and they're really trying to promote that through their characters and the story that they're telling.
That's awesome. I like that as well. I think that's so important because art is the connective glue in our community that brings us together, and I think I thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Um, that actually brings me that conveniently brings me to my next point that I'd like to talk about is, kind of the role of art and how art works as connection. Oh, Isabel is joining us. We're gonna let Isabel in. Uh, maybe we'll wait for a second. Hi, Isabel. We're talking about the importance of narrative. Um, we were talking about just now. Um, I've got it in the chat. Think of a time where you've been moved by something. What was it? How did it make you feel, and why was it important? So if you would like to share with us as well, you can. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, and you just arrived. It's okay if you can't share. Uh, so we're talking about how our stories are as important as our creation and are part of our creation. Yeah. Oh, and if you do want to share as well, you are muted. So you would have to
Oh,
unmute
you
to
were
share.
talking to me. I must have missed
Yeah,
the first the thing you said. Sorry.
that's okay. I was gonna say, you came in at the right time.
Oh no.
So we are.
Ramneet's also here, by the way.
Ramneet's also here. Oh, I'm
Hello,
excited.
Jessica.
Hi, Ramneet. I'm
How
so
are you?
excited. Oh, I'm okay. We're doing a presentation right now. So, uh, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. So I was gonna actually pitch the question to you guys. We're talking about the importance of narrative. So we're saying art is powerful, art can change the world, and our stories are part of what makes art so powerful. So the question that I put to the group that we've been talking about is think of a time where you've been moved by something. So it could be a performance, it could be like a comedy show, it could be a theater show, it could be music, or it could be a gallery, an installation, a piece of art, anything. What was it? How did it make you feel? And why was it important to you?
Here, Ramneet, let's go now. He's slapping me. I think he's moved by sunsets.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Canada's nature, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how did it make you feel, Ramneet?
Ephemeral beauty.
Ah.
It's like what happens is like I am spellbound by the beauty of nature. So, and I'm like, it's one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it? How does it make you feel? What is it? And then there was a third question.
Why
right?
why is it important to you? Why does it matter?
Yeah, why does it matter, Ramneet?
There are some things that gives you like a mental peace, like, and I guess nature is one of them, and sunset being one of the biggest things. Like sun is huge, and when sun goes down, it tells you like it's planning for another day. It's coming, it will come, it will rise again. So it just tells you or gives you hope that everything is not lost yet. So there are better things in life to come up.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
that's excellent. Thank you for sharing. Do you want to share, Isabel, or
Yes,
Uh,
Isabel.
okay, what's the first question again?
I have it in the chat, so if you click the word chat,
No,
you
it,
can.
wait.
So think of a time where you've been moved by something. What was it? How did it make you feel? And why was it important to you?
I was moved by Ramneet to be in a relationship, and it made me feel loved. And Carly's laughing. And why is it important? Because he's not even looking at me. He's looking on his phone. And why is it important? Why are you important to me, Ramneet?
Why?
Because it makes me feel loved and special, and we're a team.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. Um, so yeah, I'm just everyone's sharing such nice things. Like we've, talked about community and we've talked about like Tanya was talking about her favorite art activist and how they were kind of giving a voice and stuff to all these refugees and Remneed's talking about the beauty of nature and you know how important that is for us to connect to nature as well. And Carly had also shared about like some of her music that she enjoys and like how there's a lot of themes of advocacy in that. So I think we're all bringing up really excellent stuff. Um, so I'm gonna move on to our next point, where um, I'm talking about connection and the role of art. I know Sam had brought up about in a lot of novels that he's been reading, community is a big theme. And I was so happy that Sam brought that up because I want to get into talking about how, as artists, we're being kind of a connection or a bridge between like the figurative and the literal. And, we're acting as like a medium or a guide to help others to connect ideas and also to connect with one another. So, by sharing our stories and sharing our art and our lived experiences, we're reaching out into the world and enabling people to see a new perspective and to form new thoughts and ideas and have new ways of thinking to connect to one another and to connect to new content and ideas. Um, and we can spark inspiration and reflection in others. Um, so I think that's definitely an important aspect of art and an aspect of telling your story. The really interesting thing about all of that is I think it adds up to expression. Um, I'm often struck by how important expression is. It's something that I think we tend to forget about how magical creation and expression are as artists because it's easy to take for granted the really wondrous things that we do all the time. Because it's so normal for us to create, it's easy to kind of take for granted that it is this really magical culmination of your lived experience and your creativity, and like those little bits of yourself are coming out in your work. And what we're doing is communicating and expressing ideas, and you know it all goes back to kind of like sharing our stories. It's important to communicate our stories because they help inform others, uh, and it allows us to connect to others in a unique way that shows like audiences and viewers like new perspectives and new ways to think about things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to find your voice and how to tell your story. I can't really say 100% like this is how you do it, because I can't tell people how to think. But finding your voice is so important, especially because minority voices matter, and it's important for us to be putting those stories out there. And finding your voice is sometimes just telling your story. Actually had a lot of difficulty writing this presentation because a lot of the material is actually very, very academic. Because I'm talking about narrative, I'm also talking about why art matters, because why art matters and narrative seem to go together quite a lot. And I was finding it difficult to make it sound relatable and to not. Carly knows I've shared some of this presentation with her yesterday. I was trying very hard to not sound like it walked out of a textbook. And I came down to thinking about how we talk about these things. So I was thinking about how our story is part of the doing, is part of the creation. And how do we talk about the doing? How do we talk about the wondrous things that we're doing? And how do we talk about the interesting lives, the difficult lives that we're leading? And I came down to thinking about how, what, and why as kind of a starting place of how to tell a story, is think about, how you're doing something, what are you doing, why are you doing it? And if you can answer those questions, it's a good start on telling your story. And it's a simple way of starting to break the ice between yourself and the page, or yourself and an audience, to get your messages out there. There's a story in everything, even advocacy. Oftentimes, you're telling stories. You're telling the story of groups of people, or you're telling stories about your history, your own past, or anything. And it's something that I think is uniquely, that artists are uniquely capable of doing, because of the heavy story focus. And creation itself is really great to lend life, like to breathe life into complex issues. And it makes things relatable for people to grab onto those ideas and to form new perceptions and to encounter other people's lived experiences in like an engaging and safe environment, because it can be hard to reach out and get people to learn. It can be hard to get people to feel comfortable and learn something new unless they feel safe. And I think art is a great platform for that. So I just wanted to open up discussion on this, guys. If you wanted to talk about some questions that I had. How can we bring light to underrepresented stories? Is a question that I thought I would put out in the group, and I'll put that in the chat so that we can read that. So how do you guys think we could bring light to underrepresented stories?
I think, Jessica, that we are in a very unique position as creators, that we are able to give voice to the people when they don't know how to express themselves,
Mm.
like through our vision. And like, for instance, that the first time I ever had to be in a wheelchair, and it was such a profound experience that I knew that I had to do in the craftsism class, I had to do something based around that. Right. And that's when I did that installation at the NBCCT library to get actual people to sit in a wheelchair without any help and see how that feels.
Mm.
So through experience, we transfer that knowledge to people and make them think. I think that was one way to try to get a message across.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're really gifted to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of ways to communicate in through creativity that just are so useful to getting messages out there and giving a platform to underrepresented stories, because it can be hard to find your voice. It can be so difficult to feel comfortable, sometimes even sharing or finding a place that feels safe enough to share. Because I know it's not, sometimes living with disability is not a reality that people are exposed to very often. So it's definitely needs to be talked about more. Um, does anybody else have anything? Thank you for sharing, Tana, by the way. Does anyone else have anything to add? Um, um,
I think one of the biggest things can be sometimes being willing to show or talk about our own experiences.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if someone doesn't see other people talking about it or expressing the way things have been for them, it can feel kind of isolating.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that up, Carly. I know it can feel so isolating, honestly. Like living with a disability is very isolating, and I think art is great at bringing people together. And like as we're sharing our stories through art and sharing our stories through just like the act of creation, it does bring people closer together. And it's such a it's such a unique and good vessel for humanizing um different aspects, and especially when it's something that people are unfamiliar with. It's so good to get people learning and seeing and thinking about things that are outside of their realm of experience. And art is such a good way of piecing that together and communicating that, because you can literally show people. There's a saying in film that is like, that says, show me, don't tell me. Because it's more interesting in a film for them to show how characters are growing and how events are happening than it is for them to just tell you. And I think, you know, you've got a lot more in the art that people can pull from that, because there's a lot more than just words. There's images and sounds and anything. Um,
I just started a sketch writing or sketch comedy writing class, and
yeah,
they were asking us to come up with sketch ideas and stuff. And anyway, I just kind of picked a few things, and I just kind of put it to the group because I just had an idea. Like, I'm like, oh, I think it's funny. Like the Charlotte Street Art Center, they
mm,
have a platform of stairs, So they have stairs that go up and then stairs that go down. So in the platform, it's in the middle of those two staircases, and they have an accessible washroom. And I'm like, who designed this? Like, there's no way the elevator can bring you to that little platform. And then I was like, I want to create a sketch about that, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have the idea.
Yeah.
And then the guy was like, well, yeah, why don't you focus on who designed this? Like, come up with the meeting. And then I was like, oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just kind of need a group to talk about, or I know Ramneet and I watched this show called, now I'm blanking on the name of it. Ramneet, what was the name of that show with the seat guy in Toronto or Vancouver? What do you mean, which one? There's only one. It was like beginner or newcomer or
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. It's a show about this Sikh guy, a little younger than us. And he can I don't think he's ever seen a show like that, like produced in Canada. It's the first time I've seen it anyway. And it was kind
Yeah.
of showing the culture, right? I don't know if that inspired you to kind of write your own story after seeing that. But I know when I saw that show Speechless with Minnie Driver, and because this is a pretty funny show. I was like, oh, I wish I would have wrote that show. Like, it's so good, So I find when I see stuff that's not exactly my story, but something that I, really enjoy, that can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along with, sharing your ideas with other people and then kind of building off. Because sometimes you just have like a bit of an idea, and then when you talk it out, you can flesh it out more. Like, I don't know. I think that's just an improv thing. Late Bloomer. Yeah, that's the name of the show. There we go.
Okay. I think that's true, honestly. Like, it is easier when you can, like, commiserate and work with other people sometimes to get your ideas out there, because it's hard sometimes to kind of break through those, like, blocks. Sometimes there are a lot more blocks than we think. And you've brought up another important point, is, representation matters. Representation is so important. And part of telling our stories is we're creating representation. We're being representation of disability, or in the arts. And that's important because we have to bring our voices to the table, and we need to.
Sometimes too, like just helping somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think we all know Cass, and she
Yeah.
was in my improv group as well. And she went to the stand-up comedy writing class or whatever. And I keep constantly try to think up jokes, right? Because I know her, I know what she's like, I know her kind of sense of humor. And I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if, because there's some stages that she, can't really access because there's no ramp, like somebody has to lift her up there. It's very awkward. And I said, you should travel with two strong men. You dress them up either like in suits or make them look like strippers, and have them lift you up in there and just kind of snap your fingers like, okay, I need my manservants. And they just kind of go and they put you there. And then she's like, you see, they're like my seeing eye dogs or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, these are my access men or whatever. And just make fun of it. Like, have them roll out a carpet, just be ridiculous about it. And I'm just like, like, I don't care if it's not, if she takes my ideas and run with it. Like, these are not really my story to tell, right? But it's like, wouldn't it be funny to see that, right? And kind of,
and it normalizes it. It
yeah.
normalizes the access, which is so important, because then people see it, it's not uncomfortable for them, and they're like, yeah, hey, I saw this happen. Like, it's so important because that's part of their story, and that's part of getting other people to kind of see the access and the things that are in our lived experiences that we're trying to share. Like, that's part of the representation. I'm so happy you shared that.
I think humor really helps.
It does.
Because it sticks in your head, right? You're like, I remember that funny thing. And it's also like it's not as confrontational as
It's true.
maybe other ways of, because I mean I've seen some activist art and you're like, oh man, that's powerful, and there's different ways of communicating your message, and all of them are great and they're valid. I just prefer the comedic way because it's light, you know what I mean? Like it's just kind
It
of a hint of something and you're like, oh, I never thought of it. Like it sneaks up on you, like, oh, I didn't
yeah,
even think. And even when I shared my thing about the sketch comedy about the platform or whatever,
yeah.
and he was thinking, what if it was an architect, and they wanted to be like I forget how he named the architect, like this hipster architect that want to do these ridiculous impractical things, right? Like what if we build it with stairs in the middle, like nobody could actually access that, or whatever. They wanted to do these crazy designs that are totally not functional. And then the guy was trying to think of like, well, what are other access things besides wheelchairs? And he had a hard time thinking about it because he
Mm,
doesn't, it's not his lived experience, right?
yeah, he hasn't been exposed to that.
Right. So it's like the more that we talk about these things and imagine these things, then the more um uh it brings the awareness to other people, and then they think about that, right? Like
Yeah,
that'll
and
probably stick in his mind, like, oh yeah, I should probably know.
yeah, and like the more normal it becomes, like we start to normalize these things because they become more in like in the light. Um, you're reminding me of when I went to that one time at band camp. Uh, when I went to band camp at Acadia over the summer, I needed large print sheet music. I I use it because I have a hard time processing what I'm seeing, and having like a bigger sheet music can help me process things and read music a lot faster, which is good. But I realized, was like, why, like there are adults at the camp. There are also younger kids, and so like you play in the band, and there's kids there, there's adults there. Everybody gets along. It's really fun, um, and you're all playing music, and it's everybody's learning. But I realized like how important it was for me to talk about my really absurdly large sheet music, because a lot of them were like, why is your sheet music so big? Um, so I was telling them, I was showing them, I was like, this is my sheet music. It's printed on legal paper, and it's at 130% magnification. um, is what I was using at the time, and they're like, wow. And my thoughts behind it was like, maybe a friend of theirs might need big print sheet music, or maybe someone might need large print media of some kind, and they'll think back to that moment where they're like, yeah, there was that girl at band camp who had really big sheet music, and think, oh hey, we can make things large print. Someone might do large print, because I was thinking about like maybe in the future, because they've seen it, they'll think about it later when someone else needs it or they need it. And it normalizes it, because there can be so much stigma asking for accommodation too, right? And asking for like, hey, can I have large print sheet music, or like just different accommodations. So it's definitely important to kind of put those stories out there so that people can see it. Um, yeah, so that's uh I feel like we've come to a natural stopping point in our presentation. We're at the top of the hour, and I only planned enough content to take us till 8 o'clock. So I appreciate you all coming. That's the end of our presentation. I'm actually going to stop our recording here.